This says no sound. Can you guys hear me? Just double checking. Hopefully you can. Fingers crossed. Well, hopefully you can hear me. My name is Stephanie Menor. I'm here to walk through all the basics of polymer clay jewelry making with you. So if this is your very first time using polymer clay, this is the class for you. If you've never made jewelry before, this is the class for you. We're going to go through all the basic steps, techniques, and things that you need to know to get started creating jewelry. So, as I said, my name is Stephanie Menor. I'm your instructor today. Let's switch to the top-down camera and take a look at some of the projects that we are going to walk you through today. So first, we have a couple different pairs of earrings. These are more of a Southwest style with a tassel at the bottom. We've got some really cute cactuses, and these have texture to them. We're going to show you how to add that texture to your polymer clay. Then we have a keychain. This is made of 3 polymer clay beads. So we're going to show you how to make beads, how to bake them, and then how to assemble them together. And then we have this necklace. This is a pendant necklace with a sun, and you notice that shiny coating. So we'll show you how to achieve a shiny coating on your projects. All right, let me clean this up, and we are just going to jump right in by showing you some of the basic supplies that you're going to need. So first we have clay. This is patterned polymer clay. This is another one. This is an ombre pattern. And the cool thing about this is that it is brand new. You may not have seen this before because this is something that's new in the world. And the pattern is in the clay. So I'm going to open this one up. Inside is this little acetate box, and definitely keep this. Don't toss that. This is how I store my leftover clay slabs here. But this is what the clay looks like. It is in a plastic sheet that I'll remove, but you can see that those colors go through the clay. Let me open this up. Sometimes it helps to have a little tool to do that. So the colors are all the way through the clay, and this saves you so many steps, especially if you're a beginner to polymer clay. This is really going to save you some of the more difficult parts of working with polymer clay, which is very time consuming in making your own patterns. So here the patterns are made for you, and all that's left to do is sort of add your creativity and spin on it. So I'm just opening this up. And this is the clay. You can see it's very flexible. This clay is pre-conditioned. So we are not going to be conditioning this clay before we start to work on it. All right, so that's the clay, available in lots of different patterns. We also have some basic clay tools over here. So I have a sharp one. I have these double-sided tools that have a different kind of point on both sides. There is a rolling pin. There is also a blade. It comes in this little case. It is very, very sharp, so be careful. Not the case, the blade. And so this is the blade. Now, all of these things that I'm showing you are available together in a starter toolkit available at Michael's. So everything that I show you is available at Michael's or purchase right now. It's in the jewelry making department. All right, so these cool things that I'm laying out here are more tools that we're going to use. This is a bead maker. We're going to put some clay in there and slide it like this, and we can create circular beads. These are some cutters. These are the Southwest cutters. And so, you know, they come in a theme pack, so you get lots of similar shapes, but these are all sized and shaped for jewelry making. And that's the difference between our cutters and some other cutters that you see out there that are more for basic crafting. These are specifically to make jewelry pieces. Okay, and this is a texture sheet. This is how we're going to get the texture on that cactus. And so we use this. It is double-sided, so this side has a swirly, and this side has a wood texture. Lots of different textures and patterns available for the cutters, for the texture sheets. There's tons of cool stuff in store when you go look. Now I'm bringing in this. This is a ceramic tile. I got this at my local hardware store, and it has a shiny, smooth texture. So there's lots of tiles when you go look. You want something that's shiny and you want something that doesn't have any type of texture to it, because that texture will transfer to your pieces. Working on a tile like this is my preferred way of working with polymer clay, but there's a lot of ways to do this. If you do not have a ceramic tile, you're going to need a baking sheet and probably a piece of parchment paper. And I'll show you how to transfer things to a separate sheet. But the brilliance of working on a ceramic tile is I don't need to move it around. I can pick up this whole tile and put it in my oven, and I can just bake it right on there. Okay, so I think that was all the supplies. There might be a few things I'm forgetting here, but we'll get to those as we use them. So we have our clay down here. The first thing I want to do is bring in, these are thickness guides. And these thickness guides are 4.5 mm. And here's my roller. So I want to start by rolling. I go straight into rolling. The thickness guides on either side help me to roll this in an even way. And I'm not needing to make this super thin. You can make it as thin as you want to, say anywhere up to about down to about 2.5 mm. Anything smaller than that is going to get really, really tiny for you. Also, if you've worked with polymer clay before, if you have a pasta machine that you use for polymer clay, go ahead and use it. This can be rolled through a pasta machine. Now, of course, you are going to stretch that pattern, but it can be used with a pasta machine, and it can be rolled out fairly thin. Okay, the next supply that I didn't mention is I have a little cup of cornstarch here. And this is a great way so that things don't stick to your clay. And the number one thing I'd like to use that for are cutters. So this is an example of a cutter. I would put it in polymer clay and then use it to cut. I, however, want to use my Southwest style cutters. So just let me open this up. These are two of the shapes that we're going to use. These are plastic cutters, ergonomic on the top, so it's flat on the top where your fingers will be pressing it down. Very sharp cutting edge. And this is the shape that I want to use today. So I take that, I dip it in my cornstarch, move that away. And then I want to find on here where to put this. So this is striped. So because I can see through the cutter, I can see exactly where I'm cutting. I want to try to make this symmetrical so that one of these stripes is kind of lined up in the middle here. So that for me is going to be right here. And I press down. And you may have to press this, might be a little difficult for you to press this down, but just keep going and you will eventually reach the ceramic tile underneath. All right, and then lift this up, straight up. And there you go. I have some cornstarch on here, but that's okay. We can just brush that off. And of course, you would fill up the rest of this with more cut out shapes. We are making a pair of earrings, so you're going to need two of these. So let me go ahead and cut another one. And I want to be careful to choose, again, where I press this, because I want it to match that first one. Making earrings is, for me at least, one of the more difficult tasks because you have to make two things that are the same. And the type of crafting that I like to do, which is kind of just playing around and experimental, it is difficult to make two things that are exactly alike. But we're going to show you all the tips and tricks on how to do that. Okay, I press that all the way down. Let's bring it up. And now this one, you can see it came up with the cutter. Maybe I didn't put enough cornstarch on there. Maybe the clay wasn't stuck down enough to the tile, but this gives me a chance to show you what to do. So first of all, there's this centerpiece, which I am just going to pop out because I'm not using him. And then very gently using a tool, not using your fingers, we want to try to just press this out of there. And just taking my time to get this out because you can very easily make unwanted marks in the clay. That's why I don't recommend you using your hands because guaranteed you're going to get fingernails in there. You're going to get fingerprints in there. And for some reason, don't know why, but that is really stuck in there. That's okay. We're gonna work through it. I'm just kind of going along the edges and pressing down. It's coming. It's wanting to let go. Part of the challenge with this particular shape is that it's very delicate. All right. All right. Well, let's see how I did. Okay. So here it is. And you can see I did kind of rough up the edges here, but that's okay. I can fix it. I can go in with my tool and just any areas that kind of lift it up, I can fix. All right. Now, this other one is going to be much easier because all I have to do is this. I just have to weed out the clay that I don't want. And this is why I usually love to work on a ceramic tile because the clay just sticks to it. And then these are actually ready to go into the oven. I can take this whole sheet, put it in the oven. And so let's talk about baking. So as you may or may not know, polymer clay is an oven baked clay. There are a ton of clays out there in the world. Polymer clay has to go into the oven. And when you do put in the oven, it's at 250 degrees for 20 minutes. So it is a low temperature oven for about 20 minutes, even up to 25 minutes. And what that does is it creates clay that is very flexible. These are some pieces that I made in another class, and these have already been baked. And this is the flexibility you should have on your clay when it comes out of the oven. It should not be brittle in any way. It shouldn't be snapping and breaking. If you find that you have brittle clay, it's probably because it needs to be baked a little bit longer. Not because you did anything wrong, but just because a lot of times our oven thermometer is not exactly right, or there may be a cold spot inside of the oven. So brittle clay means clay that has not been baked enough. All right, so these are ready to go into the oven. And we are going to pretend, let me take this away. So this has already been baked. Here's the back of it. So you can see, yes, that pattern does go all the way through to the back. Here is the earring that we're making. So what I have to do is add a hole here. So we need a hole to be placed here so that we have an attachment point to add a jump ring and then a charm. In this case, it's a tassel charm. We also need to add a hole up at the top to add a jump ring. And then this is a bead and then a finding up here. So let me show you. The pieces I pulled out of the center would make cute earrings too. I know. You know, let me show you. This one's one that's been baked. But like, how cute is that? You can use every part of this. We don't want to waste any clay. This would make a really cute stud earring. And thank you for suggesting that in the chat, because if we have time, I'll show you how to make this into a stud earring. But for now, let me put that to the side. Okay, so we have some work to do before we can assemble all of these pieces together. So let me show you what we need to do. First, drill holes. And I suggest a small hand drill like this. You may know this as a pin vise, but it's just a small tool. It goes, the bottom goes into your palm and the top turns like this. And it's a very easy way to drill a hole. This hole, this bit, I believe is 2 millimeters. And this is sold at Michael's. So I place the bit where I want the hole to go. So I need one here. And I'm just starting to turn. And eventually that pops through. And I can tell this clay is well baked because it is not snapping, it is not brittle. And there's the hole that I added. It does go all the way through. The back holes tend to be a little more closed up, the entrance here. So you can always go through the back of it too, just to kind of clear out the little extra clay. All right, so we need one down here as well. Let me place that and start twisting. There it is, coming through the back. And maybe just clean up the back a little bit. Okay. Clean this up. All right, so we got that ready. Next, we have this top part. This metal part is a bead. And you know, Michael's has the best beads. They've got that giant wall of strung beads, and this is one of them. And this is the bead. It's got a hole through it. Now we need to add connecting points to that bead. And that is done with this item, which is called a head pin. So these are available in the findings area of the jewelry department. And they just string right on. You can see one side already has a loop. We need to create a loop on this side that looks just like that. So let me show you how to do that. You are going to need some special pliers and some wire cutters. These are just little end snippers or end nippers, wire cutters. This is the special tool. This is a round nose plier. You can see that the jaws of the plier are cones. And this is what is going to help us get that round shape that we need. So the first thing I do is I string that through and then I make a 90-degree bend right here. And now I need to trim this off because this is more wire than we need. We only need about 3/8 of an inch. So I'm going to cut that right there. There we go. Maybe a little bit shorter than that. We only need 3/8 of an inch. There we go. Okay, so now we grab our round nose pliers and we grab the end and see how my pliers are situated up and down so I can grab the end of it right at the end of my pliers. I don't want to do this way down here. And using my wrist, after I have a firm grip on that little tail, I just bend it back, twisting my wrist. And when I can't twist anymore and I have to let go, I just re-grab it again and keep twisting. We're just bending it back on itself. And that's how you create a loop on either side. There we go. So this now is not a bead. This we've converted into what we call a connector. And that's exactly what we need because this is going to connect here to here. All right, so we got that. We need our earring finding. Now, earring findings come in lots of different shapes and sizes. This earring finding is a stud finding. I have these, which are very similar. This is what it looks like in the store. Let me grab one of these. Don't you love that Michael's findings come in a Ziploc bag now? It's a very small detail, but for us crafters, makes a huge difference. It's a Ziploc. We can have something to save it. So here is an option. Or if you don't like that kind of stud look, you can use a classic fish hook, fish ear wire. These things have a lot of different names. So whenever I tell you the name, I like to tell you a lot of different names so you can have different search terms. All right, so we're going to use this one, this, and a tassel. So I don't have this particular color. I have a gray tassel instead. Okay, so I have all my components here. We're just ready to assemble them, and we are going to assemble them with this thing here, which are called jump rings. And jump rings, this is the kind of thing where you need just a whole big box of them. And so this comes gold, silver, and lots of different sizes. I'm going to pick out some sizes. Let's see, I need one to jump from here to here. That can be small. And from here to here and here. So 3 jump rings go into this earring. All right, let's start connecting. So we have our connector that we made. We need to open the end of this. So we just need to temporarily bend the end of this so that I can slide this jump ring on there and close it up again. I'm going to do this a few times so you'll see. See how I just like bent the wire to add the jump ring. Now we are going to open the jump ring to add the next part. So the jump ring opens like this, like a spring opening. And then we add our earring finding or our ear wire. If it gets too small for your hands to grab, you may need to bring in 2 pliers to close this up like that. Making sure that that is closed. All right, so I have the top part of my earring worked out. I need another jump ring that is going to jump us from our clay piece here. So I'm going to put this through. And before I close it, I'm going to put the top part through. And now I'm going to close it. All right, we're almost there. Now we just need this jump ring. Which goes through the bottom. And before we close it, let's add our tassel. Close it up. Just making little adjustments so that I can close it. And there we go, all assembled together. So depending on what you are using the polymer clay for, really depends on, oh, you know what? No, I guess so. I thought that I put that top on backwards, but it's correct. If you were making a whole bunch of the same earring, you would want to batch this out so that you're doing all of the baking at once and then all of the assembly at once. So in this case, we're just making one of the 2 earrings, but that is how quick the process goes. Okay, So first project done. That was pretty good. You guys still here with me? Okay. Moving on to our second project, which are these really cute little cactus earrings. So this one, similar to that first one, it has a clay piece and then a bead and then all of our findings. But the thing that makes this project special is the texture. So this allows us to show you working with texture. All right, so here is my tray back. I do want to clean it. If you just give me a minute here. I just have like a regular all-purpose cleaner. Now for this next project, we're using regular solid clay. So solid clay, of course, you're familiar with that. If you're familiar with polymer clay at all, it comes in lots of different colors. The clay that is in the jewelry department, which is this clay that I'm working with, you can see it comes in the same slab format as the pattern clay. But here, I'm just going to break off part of it, and I do want to condition it. So this process that I'm doing is called conditioning. And it's one of the basic tenets of working with solid color polymer clay. You need to condition it first. And conditioning is just a process of working it through with your hands and warming it up, making it soft and supple. And this will make your life a lot easier down the road as you work with clay. So when the clay is solid color, always make sure that you are conditioning well. I know we have a small group with us today, but if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat. We have a bunch of folks ready to jump in and hopefully help you out with any questions that you have. If I happen to see your question, I will try to answer it live on air, but I don't always see them. So, but just know that there is someone there to answer your questions. All right, so just in the minute or two that I've been working with this, you can see that that clay is so much more supple and flexible now. All right, so I set that down. I am going to add some cornstarch to the top of it. I can add it directly to the clay, or I can add that to my tool, just like you would flour, and roll it out. Now here, I'm not using the thickness guides on either side. I'm kind of eyeballing it. Until I feel like it's even. Okay, that's looking good. I didn't need to roll out a whole big piece of it. This is probably only 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches. I'm just rolling out what I need to do these cactus earrings. And now I bring in the texture sheet. So this I showed you at the beginning of class, but it is a way to get texture onto your clay. We've got a lot of fun textures, everything from tropical leaves to stonework to scrolls. These are all awesome, and they are double-sided, each one. So this is the texture that I want to put here. And I always like to use cornstarch when working with these texture sheets. So in fact, sometimes I can get a little brush. You can either brush it here or brush it here. This is just an old paintbrush. All right, so I'm gonna lay that down, grab my roller, and I want to press it down. And the key here, don't let that texture sheet move, because we want to roll it and keep the sheet in place so that we aren't double imprinting. We're not pressing down and then on the next press, it's like scooted over a little bit. We don't want that. We want to try to keep it down. So I'm holding the texture sheet with one hand, I'm rolling with the other hand. Hopefully that can get us a nice clean imprint. Let's see how we did. Well, it's hard to see because I have so much cornstarch on here, but you can see the wood texture coming through. Now, if I did not like that texture, if I want to switch to another texture, it's no problem. I can just ball this up again, roll it out again, and start over. So all is not lost. All right, here is my cactus little cutter. I'll bring my cornstarch in. Tap that in there. Find where I want. So it depends if I wanted the lines to go that way, turn it this way, but I want them to go vertically. So I'm going to do right here. And we'll do right here. Okay. Now I can fill the rest of this up with other shapes if I wanted to. Maybe I want to fill this up with hexagon shapes because I want to make some stud earrings. So you can fill it all up, use the clay, and then when we're ready, we just peel away or weed out what we don't want. And this goes back into my stash, and I can save that for another project. And to perfect this, I can go on with a sharp tool and kind of go around. If I see any extra clay, like right here, I can see that there's a little hair somehow embedded. So let's get rid of that. And I can clean up the edges and just make sure before this goes into the oven that it looks the way that I want it to. In between these little arms of the cactus, maybe I just want to make sure that those are kind of clean, straight edges. And all of the rest of this stuff, I really don't care about. That's going to go in the oven with it. And now this is ready to bake. So it goes into a 250-degree oven, 20 minutes. Make sure your oven is preheated. If you have a thermometer that can go inside your oven, might as well test what temperature your oven's at, because you do want to make sure that it's at 250 degrees. If it's not, if it's lower, you want to cook it less. If it's higher, you want to cook it if your oven temperature is lower, you want to cook it longer. If the oven temperature, the actual temperature is higher, you want to cook it less. So that's up to you. These are the earrings that we're making. And here is our cactus. This is baked already out of the oven. You can see that it's nice and supple. And we want to add a bead there. So we have some seed beads. And I can add any color I want, but I like the way that that kind of red looks. So just like in the last earring example, we need to take that single seed bead and turn it into a connector. So I do that with this eye pin. So repeating the same steps that I did before, string that on. Then we need to bend it 90 degrees. And the smaller the bead, the harder it is to bend it, but I was able to do that. Then we want to trim 3/8 of an inch, which is about right there. And my round nose pliers right here. Grab the end and twist it back on itself. Grab it again, keep twisting. And there, we have a connector. I can kind of straighten out the wire if I need to. There we go. All right, so that's going to go there, and we need an ear wire for here. And they are connected with jump rings. One last step though before I connect everything is we do need a drill hole to go here at the top. So here's my hand drill again. Placing that exactly where I want it to go. And, you know, you can cut these holes before it goes in the oven. And there are plenty of people that do that. I just do not prefer that method, just because I don't think you get a very consistent hole size. And so I'm just kind of cleaning up this hole that I made, any extra little bits of clay, and that's ready. Let's get some jump rings. I'm going to need 2 jump rings. I'm pulling a small and a large. So the small one is about 6 millimeters. Sorry, the larger one is about 6 millimeters. The smaller one is about 4 millimeters. Okay, the larger one, I find the break in the jump ring. And we're going to open that up like that. And then string it through. But before we close it, we add on our bead connector and close that up in the opposite direction that we opened it. So now these 2 pieces are connected, and I can use a jump ring to connect this to this, but I actually don't even need that jump ring. I can just connect these 2 pieces directly together by using this end loop as a jump ring. It would help if, okay, there we go. So I'm opening it like a jump ring, adding this, and closing it back up. And that just eliminates one extra finding that you need and one extra step. And there's our cactus earring. So cute and easy, super easy. Endlessly customizable with different cutter shapes and with different beads. All right, that's 2 projects down. How are we doing? You guys good? You're hanging in with me? Okay, next we have a keychain. Now we just pretty recently did a class on bead making with polymer clay and keychain making. So these are the keychains we made in that other class. These are kind of the stretchy kind that go around your wrist. Love these. We made a bright version too. And we also in that class made this kind of a keychain where it's like a stack of beads on some cord, like this one, stack of beads on a cord. So this is actually a 3rd type of keychain where it's a stack of beads, but these are a little bit different in that these are made into bead connectors. So we're going to do our process with those eye pins to connect them together. But first, let's make the beads. That's where we bring in this tool. This is a bead maker. It has 2 parts, they come apart, and it fits together very nicely. And you can see the holes through there. It makes a 10 millimeter round bead, 8 millimeter, and 6 millimeter. And these little portioners on the top do exactly that. They portion out the clay that's needed. So I'm actually going to bring back in this green clay that I just worked with, and I'm going to condition it again with my hands. You always want to work with well-conditioned clay. And I'm just going to break off a little piece and press it into this portioner, taking out all the extras. So this amount of clay is the exact amount of clay that I need to make a 10 millimeter bead. So let's get it out of there. This much clay. I just kind of roughly roll it into a ball. And then that goes into the largest channel here. Let's put this together. We're going to roll that a few times. And what's that doing inside is it's just, that was a complete fail. Let's try again. Oh, I see what the problem is. Oh, duh. Sorry, I had this turned around. You want to make it so that the holes are lined up. So here's your 10, 6, 10, 8, and 6 mm. Now it will work. There you go. Perfect little round sphere bead. So you can see how quickly you can roll through making a bunch of beads. And these bake in the oven, just like those cactuses and everything that we made. These bake in the oven 20 minutes, 250 degrees. The only thing that I would caution though, when you're making these beads is they are much thicker. Like for example, look at the thickness difference. So I would actually bake these for another, an extra 5 minutes or so, just because I want to make sure that the clay that's like in the middle of that is baked all the way. And so these are baked. This is what they look like when they come out of the oven. This is a great way to use up your little leftover scraps and just make beads. So to use them, we do need to have a hole through the bead. Now, I've already drilled holes through a few of these. Let's see, this one, yeah, these ones have holes. This one does not. If you have an electric drill, a little Dremel drill, that would work wonderfully for this. But it actually doesn't take that long. The hardest part is you want to make sure that you are hitting the center of that bead. So as I kind of start the hole, I'm looking at it this way to make sure that's going through the center. I'm looking at it this way. I'm just kind of turning it around to make sure that it's going to come out the other side, where I want it to be. There it is. Let's get that off of there. And clean it up a little bit. So here it is. That hole has gone all the way through. And so these are now beads. They are ready to bead like any other bead projects that you have. You can also use pre-made plastic beads, wood beads for this. But let's show you, let's bring in our example. So here we have the key ring, jump ring, bead connector, bead connector, bead connector, jump ring, tassel. So let's do it. So we're going to need 3 eye pins to thread through. We're going to create 3 bead connectors. So again, 90 degrees, and you cut it. Grab the end, roll it back on itself. When you can't roll anymore, let go and grab it again. And there's one that's done. Just kind of cleaning up any little extra clay that might get stuck there. We're going to bend it 90 degrees. You might need to use some pliers to do that. Kind of get it started and then press it with your fingers and chop that off to 3/8 of an inch. And roll it back. Grab it and roll it back. Number 2 is done. All right, one more. There's the hole. Using pliers to bend that over. Chop that. And round nose pliers. Oops, trying to grab it right at the end. And there you go, 3 connectors. And then you connect them together. We're going to use these loops that we just made, open it like it's a jump ring, connect it, and close it. Oh, I didn't want these 2 colors together. I wanted this one to be next to that. There we go. That's also why I like working with wire working like this. If you make a mistake, you can just unconnect it and reconnect it in the way that you want. Not every jewelry project is so forgiving. For example, when you string a 20-inch necklace and you realize you got one of the beads wrong, you have to unstring the whole thing and restring it. But here you can just kind of unattach and reattach. Okay, we need a jump ring for the top. We need kind of a larger jump ring for that because that is going to go around our keychain finding. So let's look at some keychain findings. So this is the one we're going to use. This is slightly fancier. You can see this is like the standard keychain finding. So this is a little bit fancier, but same size. Or you can attach it to one of these guys. This is a swivel lobster clasp, so this swivels around. So it just depends on how you want to use it. You can actually add both. Like I could add this to there as a jump ring. So I have 2 connection points. All right, let's get a jump ring here. And I could open this jump ring and put it on here, or I could just use it like a keychain and open that up and get it through. I find it easier to open the jump ring and just get it on there like this. And close that up. All right, here's the top. We're missing a tassel. So if you have tassels, or there are plenty of gorgeous tassels available in store, but if you don't have that, we can make our own tassel just with some chain. So I'll show you quickly how to do that. So tassel making, you just want to make sure that you are cutting chain all at the same size. So I am not going to count links, but I do suggest that if you're making these, you sit there and you count the number of links. Maybe it's 10 links, maybe it's 15 links, depending on the size that you want. I'm not going to do that method because I'm impatient. And instead, I'm going to eyeball it and then give it a haircut later. Just depends on what your personality is. If you want to know that that has exactly 10 links, then go ahead and count them out. If you're like me, who lacks any type of patience at all, just do my method here. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it, and the number of pieces that you need is really up to you. If you want your tassel to look very full, then you want to do more. I'm aiming for, let's do these. I think I did 6. Let's see what that looks like. All right, so open jump ring. So I want to slide each piece of chain onto my jump ring. And now this, you may need a magnifying glass for. This is incredibly small, but let's see if we can do it without magnification. Woo! You also need a fairly thin jump ring, well, depending on the type of chain. There are a million kinds of chain out there. Just make sure that your chain link will fit over your jump ring. Okay, we've got 2 on there. Three. Okay, 4. And like I said, this is only if you want to make your own tassel. There are plenty of tassels out there. Really cute. So this is what 6 looks like. I'm actually going to attach it to the key ring. Close this up. And that's what it looks like. This is before I give it a haircut. I didn't do so bad. I can see a couple of those chain lengths are a little bit longer than the others. But in that case, I would actually, I don't have it here, but I would actually rig this up so that this was hanging from something so that I could give it a haircut that way. But that's how you make it. Cool, awesome. Well, this is the last project we're going to be walking all the way through, but I do want to show you another project. It is around here. Here we go. So this is the only one we didn't quite get to. But just with the skills that I've taught you, the different techniques that we've already walked through in this class, you will be able to make this. So the first part is using the patterned clay. So here is the clay that was used to make this pendant. It looks like this. And so you can see this pendant was cut out of it like this using a circle cutter. In fact, this is the exact cutter that was used for that. And then we got fancy here. We added some little hand-done embellishments. So these sunbursts in the center of the sun are all pieces of polymer clay that we've very delicately and carefully cut out with our blade, and created into a sun shape. But what's cool about this piece is the shininess of it. Compare that to, let's compare it to this. This is the texture that polymer clay comes out of the oven. It's a matte finish. But if you want a shiny finish, it's very easy to add that with UV resin. So I'm going to show you, I have a piece here that I made. Oh, I just threw it on the floor, but I have a piece here that I made. I was in another class, we were making this earring, which I love because it has a finding that just fits it perfectly, this little half circle. But if I wanted that to be shiny, this is what I do. This is how it comes out of the oven. This is already baked. I need to use UV resin. So also sold at Michael's in the jewelry making department. UV resin is a clear top coat that cures in UV light. So UV light is the light from the sun or from a UV lamp. So the lamp is also sold. You can hit the button that turns it on, and I'll show you how easy it is to make a shiny coating. So I put the resin directly out of the bottle onto my piece. I can use a wood stick or a toothpick to move that to the edges. So I'm just bringing it to the edge, trying not to go over the edge if I can at all control it, because I would like it to be just I would like the shininess to stop before it goes over the edge. Let me hold that with my finger. Okay, here we go. And then here's the UV light. This will cure in about 1 to 2 minutes. You can also put this on a sunny windowsill and it will cure in just a few minutes there as well if it's sunny outside. Even if it's cloudy, you will get it to cure in the sun. It just takes a little bit longer. And that is how you add a shiny top coat to any polymer clay piece. So we're wrapping it up here. I'm just going to let this go so I can show you the final. But we do multiple classes every month here on michaels.com. We do classes on UV resin. We do classes on polymer clay. All of them are jewelry making classes. So we hope that you will come back and join us again. Take a look on michaels.com for the latest classes. We have some coming up in April, 3 classes in April. So this has gone for 1 minute. The light automatically turned off. So I would probably cure this for another minute, but I can show you now that it's already hardened. I would just probably cure it for 1 more minute, but you can see it's slightly domed on top and you get that very shiny, nice look. The difference between this before and after. Okay, so like I said, please join us again. I hope that you will. Thank you for making it all the way to the end of this class. I hope we've inspired you to go out there and craft your heart out and make some beautiful jewelry out of polymer clay. Thanks a lot, everyone. We'll see you next time.